Here's the thing, most automotive reviewers spend a couple hours with the car and then tell you all about it. Well, today I'm gonna show you a deep dive into the IS350, the exact car that I've been driving for the last number of months. So not only am I gonna show you the good, but if you stick around to the end of the video, I'll show you a few things that you need to watch out for when you're buying a new IS350. I'm Dustin Mason from Performance Lexus in St. Catharines. Let me know in the comments below what you think of this video and don't forget to subscribe. Okay, getting right into things here. The car beside me is a 2024 IS350 F-Sport Series 2 in, you guessed it, Dustin Blue. Actually, it's called Ultrasonic Blue, but it is my favorite color lately. As you've seen on the channel, we've had the LC and the ES, and now the IS in Ultrasonic Blue. So in 2024 on the F-Sport, a few things to go over on the front end here. So we do have the big F-Sport grille, which has the little hatching that we have for any of the Lexus sport models, as well as one of my favorite features that I'm surprised no one has called me out for yet in the comment section, and that is the washers for the headlights. Even my own uncle called me out for them when I was showing him this car and I showed him how excited I was that this has it. And he said his old Volvo in the 80s had that, so I shouldn't be as excited, but I am. So we also have the daytime running lights right above the bi-LED headlights, and it is a really sharp frosted type daytime running light, and it gives the whole front end a really mean look. In fact, if you look at the angles of the front end, everything sort of goes in towards and makes your eyes sort of go in towards that center of the grille, and the daytime running light sort of starts that happening with the angular that it has. And the bumper itself has that same angle, and it kind of follows theme and then curves out towards the bottom that has a real active air duct in the front bumper. There's nothing that annoys us car people more than when we see things like fake air ducts or fake exhaust or anything like that. So seeing that the IS has that shows you that this car is oriented towards a driving enthusiast. We also have some hidden parking sensors in the grille, as well as the classic older Lexus emblem. We do see some newer ones, and it isn't the heated one, by the way. On the actual hood itself, we've seen some changes over the last couple of years. We have an angle kind of starting from the quarter panel and wrapping around with a little bit of curvature towards the front. Now, my boss, whenever he gives me a car to drive, he makes me put the PPF on, and for good reason, because any car I would buy myself, and in fact, anytime I've bought a new vehicle myself, I've always gotten it PPF'd. And this one has it a little bit up towards, I guess, a third of the way up the hood. And you can't really see it unless it's dirty, and then you can see sort of the line. But even when you get up close, sometimes you have to feel that it's there. And that protects that front part of the hood. On the IS and on most of our lineup, it's not a bad idea because, you know, having the bumper, which is plastic, have some stone chips is pretty easy, but having the hood, it is metal, so any stone chips you are gonna wanna touch up, that PPF is gonna protect it, especially because if it has a little bit of that curvature. Okay, as we get to the side profile, just pay attention to how tall the car is. This is still sort of a coupe that has 4 doors, is how Lexus designed it. So me standing beside it at 6'1" gives you a really good indication of how low this car really is. In fact, that's why I ended up with this car to begin with, was my boss actually plated it for his demo, but he decided, you know, I'm a little bit younger and more spry, that it would be easier for me to get in and out of this car than he would. And obviously, I happily accepted this beautiful car as my demo. So a few things to look at here. I do have the windows tinted. Always keep it legal, people. So if the state or province you live in, it is legal to tint it, don't tint your windows. But for those of us that can do it, it is a really good idea. Not only for the privacy, like I don't like sitting in a fishbowl when I'm on the highway and there's headlights behind me and stuff like that, but also the fact that it just keeps that interior a lot cooler, and you can't tell me it doesn't look awesome with these black accents. So instead of having chrome around the windows, which we see in a lot of our cars, it is almost like a really, really dark smoked out chrome. And the mirror caps and the bottom sort of tie that together. So we have the entire mirror being blacked out, and it's like a gloss black, as well as the bottom of the side skirt. Now, please don't judge me that this car is a little bit dirty because it was raining earlier, and I drive this car every single day, and I didn't plan well in advance to keep it all shiny for this video. So I know people are gonna mention that, but please excuse me. Also, we have the F-Sport logo here on the quarter panel, which is always a great telltale sign of what package this car is. And it has, even though it's a small car, things like the doors are super, super solid and heavy. And there's not too many competitors in the marketplace that can say that. They sometimes have, you know, in the lower models or the lighter models of the lineup, sometimes you'll see some shortcuts like that when you go to shut a door and not on the IS. Now, there's a few things on the side profile that I can't really show you on video. It's really hard to do, but I'll describe them to you. So as I'm standing here looking down the side of the car, and again, this is a car that looking at it directly on and looking at it down the side, you get a little bit different angles and you see some more character come to life. One of them is this body line here that's right above the door handles, and it sort of fades away towards the back door handle. But because of that, we see something else start to come to life. And what that is at this rear door handle, the body actually gets a little bit wider. And we see that in, you know, high-end supercars and sport cars where the back ends are always a little bit bigger and just a little bit more character. And on this, we see that little bulge and it sort of follows through. And if you pay attention, like look at this angle here. So right where the gas cap is, it's almost like a little shelf. L-I-L, Lil shelf, back here towards that rear quarter panel, and that starts to tie in that rear. But before I get to the rear, the tires are a Performance Bridgestone on a 19-inch wheel. I would recommend, if you're gonna drive this in the winter, put some winters on it. Not everybody does because it is all-wheel drive in Canada. Most of these are all-wheel drive anyway, but definitely do that. And it's like a smoked out, it's almost like the new Hyper Silver. We used to see Hyper Silver on a lot of these cars. This one is now sort of like that gunmetal smoked out gray. So even if you curb them, which thankfully enough, my Harvey's drive-through experiences haven't curbed these ones yet, it is usually pretty easy to get that taken care of. And now onto the back. There's a lot of different angles and lines here. However, the first one that I want to show you, I actually have to turn on, and that is the taillight. So this taillight, when it first came out, was the first taillight to be of this design on the Lexus lineup, and now we're seeing a similar iteration on things like the LX and the RX and the NX. And what it is that sort of samurai sword all the way across from left to right, and in traffic and at nighttime, it really creates a little bit of presence when you're driving behind someone. And the reason I point it out is a lot of times when people are car shopping, they don't get to see the cars with their headlights on. Especially right now in Ontario, it's like sunlight until like 9 o'clock at night. So unless you're car shopping at 9 o'clock at night, you're probably not gonna pay attention to that. But on the IS at nighttime, it looks really, really good. Then we have some more black accents. So this is the spoiler that comes on the F-Sport Series 2. I know on the F-Sport Series 3 for a few years, we had a full carbon, but I'm pretty sure they stopped doing that. I think it was something to do with the materials or the inconsistency, but the factory spoiler is on there very well. I've never seen any defects with like spacing or anything like that. If you do an accessory, which you can get some pretty cool accessory spoilers, they do drill and have some adhesive on. So just make sure your dealership is comfortable doing it. Most Lexus dealerships will be, but do be prepared for perhaps a small flaw because at the factory, they obviously have a little bit more QC and stuff like that. If the spoiler wasn't there, we would see a really sharp edge shelf, but with it being there, it sort of adds a little bit of decoration to that back end. As we get down a little bit, we see a blacked out, and it's that same piano black rear diffuser. We have dual exhaust setup, and a good friend of mine, Ozzy, has this exact same car in the 3 package and just put on the Lexus accessory exhaust, and it sounds amazing. It's not over the top, like it's not too much drone or anything like that, but it does give a little bit of character because in the IS, I find I usually hear more of the intake than the exhaust. And doing the accessory exhaust, or there are some pretty sweet aftermarket ones. Joey's, I think I'm saying that right, makes a really good one. NVIDIA makes a really good one. So definitely check those out if you're gonna get one of these and you want to hear that amazing V6. Otherwise, we have a little bit of the diffusers and the trunk space itself. Now, this isn't a huge car, so I don't know what your expectations are. And also, I haven't looked in my trunk before making this video, so I hope there's nothing too embarrassing in here when I open this up. Luckily, not too much, just some Gatorade and some golf balls. But overall, the trunk, it's not powered. There is enough space in here, as you can tell by the golf balls, for a couple sets of golf clubs. The rear seats do fold down 60/40, so not many Lexuses have the fact that you can actually fold down the seats, and this one does, and it doesn't, increase road noise or anything like that, like in some other cars. I could fit in there, but I'm not going to, but there is enough space for me to do so if I had to. Our mission is to hit 100,000 YouTube subscribers so we can put a beautiful plaque on the wall. But that's only doable from viewers like you subscribing and sending our videos to your friends, your neighbors, your grandparents, maybe even your dog, so we can get there. Now back to the video. Okay, so sitting in the IS, now I can tell you a little bit more about my everyday driving experience. So first of all, I want to welcome you to the red interior, which blue on red, a couple years ago, I probably would have been like, I don't know if I love that, but I absolutely do love it. I think in this day and age, having something that's a little bit different and some color in life is really important. For one, when you think about it, when you're driving the car every single day, you're looking out at a road that's gray, and you're looking out at other cars that most of them are white, gray, or black. So when you're sitting in your car, in your peripherals, if I'm even saying that right, I couldn't spell it, but I could say it, in your peripherals, if you see something like color, so that's maybe a beige or a white, or in this case a red, it just adds a little bit of flavor to your eyesight and what you're looking at. And then being able to see the blue accents at the same time is really cool. So that's my 2 cents on the red. Another nice thing about this red, and this has changed over the very recent history of the IS, and that is the fact that the red actually goes up to half the dash. So sort of where my knee is and lower on the dash is the red. Now things like the floor mats and the carpets and stuff like that are all black. Most of the door panel is red, which is cool. The only thing I wish Lexus did would have been red seatbelts. I think that would have been super sweet, but they didn't. That's okay. Maybe next year. Okay, so let's talk about things like the driving position. So if you have read anything online about the IS 300 or 350, people might complain about the so-called hump that is in the driver footwell. It is there. It is not a mythical creature. It does exist. However, for me personally, I don't even notice it. And maybe it's because I have really skinny chicken legs, or the fact that I'm just tall enough that my leg kind of goes over it. Like even right now, I'm trying to find a way that it would bother me, and it doesn't. I mean, maybe if I have cruise control on and I'm taking my foot off the gas and I need somewhere for it to go, yes, if it wasn't there, maybe my foot would go there. But for the most part, I don't notice it at all. In fact, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, it's kind of comfy to rest on, but I wouldn't recommend that because it would probably kind of interfere with your gas pedal, which we don't want to do. So anyway, seating position otherwise is really, really good. It feels like you're in sort of a sportier car. Now, when my buddy Jamie drives this car, he's a little bit taller than me, and when he has the seat back, he's about 6'5", I think. I noticed that the B pillar is right near his head. So he's kind of like a lean back driver kind of guy. And when he's driving it, if he were to look to his left, the B pillar is right there. However, because of that, when he checks his blind spot, he's looking through the full rear glass, which is kind of nice, I guess. And he didn't really complain. He loved the car. So I feel like if I would have heard that complaint more often, it would mean that it bothers people, and I haven't heard it, but it was just something to note. That's a bit about the seating position itself. The seats are very comfortable. These are the sport seats. There is a couple extra, I call them panels, to the seats themselves, being that they're the sport seats. So a little bit extra, instead of just bolsters that are like super angular, there is almost like a medium bolster that's sort of transitioning from the cushion into those bolsters. And it holds you in place quite well. They are heated and cooled, and there is buttons here to do so. I don't know if there's an automatic setting. I think I always just leave them cranked. For me, I'm like a 3 or nothing type guy when it comes to heated and cooled seats. And we have a heated steering wheel as well right beside that button. In the center console, we do have the Lexus remote touch interface. So as many of you have known, most of our Lexuses have gone away from this interface, but the IS still has it. However, it's combined with the touch. So we can actually just touch the screen and go quickly to different features and settings and stuff like that, or we can use the mouse. And honestly, it's kind of nice to have the option, where sometimes I would just use the mouse because I don't want to touch the screen, and sometimes I want to touch the screen because maybe I'm the passenger, or it's just easier just like click and not think. So it is kind of nice having both. It takes up a little bit of real estate here, but not enough for me to complain about. There is something to complain about though. I usually don't know where to put my phone. The cup holders have this little gap between them, so my phone usually ends up there, or in my suit pocket, or occasionally in the armrest itself. But when it's here, I notice if I take a turn, I can hear it sort of clicking between the two sides because it's not like a really solid spot, where something like the ES350 has like a little holder for it. So I would like to see that maybe reconfigured if they do get rid of the touch interface. The shifter itself is the classic shifter. It's the gated one. People are gonna hate me in the comments for that. It is the gated one. It's not a manual gated transmission, but it does have the little notches, where the new ones is like the electronic one. That's what I mean by that. We have different drive modes, so eco, normal, and sport. I like where that's positioned because when I'm driving, I can just reach that without even looking. So that's really nice. You don't have to think about it. The snow mode sort of just tailors that throttle response to be a bit softer and a bit less like abrupt, I guess you could say. We have the brake hold button, which shout out to the person in the comments that told me I should talk about that, because you're right, that is a sweet feature. So if you don't know brake hold, if you're in the drive-thru getting your Starbucks and the guy in front of you isn't moving or the girl in front of you isn't moving, you could hit brake hold, let go of that brake, rest your leg a little bit, and then when it is time to move, you just hit the gas pedal and the car will go. So it's like putting it in park, but not putting it in park. Then we have traction control off, which you're never gonna touch probably, unless you're stuck in the snow. Or you're at the track, maybe. The one thing that this is missing is in the F-Sport Series 3, we have Sport Plus, because that has the adjustable suspension. And I will say, in my experience with this car, there's a specific on-ramp I take that I always punch it a little bit. Like I like to accelerate through this full circle legally that I go through, and there's a little bump halfway through that circle. And I noticed with this one, in the fact that it doesn't have the Sport Plus, I notice I'm a bit softer through that corner. So having Sport Plus, it's gonna tighten things up, a little bit less bounce and a little bit less, don't know the technical term, other than bounce, a little bit less movement there, up and down, and it would just feel a little more planted. But other than that, the car does feel very planted. From there, we do have just a little armrest here. I do have my tanning glasses. Don't judge me. I live in Canada and I work in an office, so sometimes I go tanning. And I do have my phone cord because, yes, it's no secret, there is no wireless Apple CarPlay. But there is CarPlay, and if you plug in your phone, it works every single time without any type of issues. So you can use that, or today on my way into work, I didn't want to plug in my phone. I just use the classic Bluetooth connection. So it's kind of nice to have both, I guess. Another cool feature that I love, and I use it every day, is the climate control is this little slidey thing. I always called it the slide. And this isn't in any car except for the IS and the RC, but it is really cool. That's how you set your temperature. You just slide your finger up and down here and it sets it. There also still is a CD player, which is wild to me, but for those of you that still got some CDs kicking around, some mixtapes, you know, summer 2012, you could slap that in there and it still works. Above that, we have the Lexus clock. It's a modern take on the Lexus clock. I really like it. It's got a nice ambience to it. There's not a ton of ambient lighting in here at nighttime, I notice. So the fact that this is there is kind of nice. And then obviously the screen above it. Little secret, the start-stop button, when you're about to start the car and you have your foot on the brake, you'll see the light go ba-bum, ba-bum, ba-bum. And that's supposed to mimic a heartbeat because the experience you're about to receive is gonna fasten your heart rate. I think that's what Lexus was trying to go for. Okay, let's talk about the gauge cluster. So we have the LFA inspired gauge cluster. I love it. I usually just keep it in the middle and have like the big circle sort of showing the tachometer and the speed and things like that. But occasionally I'll move it over and check things out like my range or my fuel economy, or for those really fun track days, my G-force meter. And no, whoever buys this car, I've never taken it to the track. But I do think that if I owned it, I probably would. And then it shows you gear position, tire pressure, things like that. Like I said, I usually mechanically move that over, and it's a cool party trick. Anytime I'm showcasing one of my friends' this car, I do that feature just to show like, oh, look at that mechanical LFA inspired gauge cluster that moves over. We have some paddle shifters, and we have some other arrows on the steering wheel itself. I usually just make sure my lane departure's on and my cruise control radar is set to like 1 instead of the 4 that it sets to. Other than that, I don't use these a ton. I don't even use them really for like answering and hanging up calls. I don't know why. Usually when I see a call coming in, I'm haphazardly just pressing the button there. So I do forget that it's on the side. And the fact that the radio has a volume knob, I don't even use the volume up and down that much, to be honest. I just use the volume knob. Everything else you're just gonna set. The rain sensing wipers are just gonna be set. There is a secret button to the left that I wanna talk about, and that is great in the winter when you wanna heat up those wipers to get rid of streaks from the ice. You guys in the northern states and all of Canada would know what I'm talking about, where the ice sort of stays underneath that wiper and it doesn't make a clean connection. You can melt that with a little button. All Lexuses have it pretty much, but usually you have to go through like 5 layers of menu options to get to it. We're on the IS, quick button and you're there. And we also have the ASC dial here, which is active sound control. Yes, it is sound being piped into the cabin through the speakers, but it is kind of nice to have that cranked and you can hear a little bit of that intake engine. If I had an exhaust on this, I'd probably turn that way down and just listen to the exhaust. Other than that, my experience, again, I'm 6'1", I fit in this car very, very well. I find the layout to be decently, tailored to people of any size. But the only thing is getting in and out of it, if you're maybe taller and heavier, you might find it a little hard on your knees just because it is a lower to the ground car. It's not as high as an NX or an RX. So that would be really my only complaint or thing to be wary of when getting after one of these cars. There's a lot to say about this car. Make sure you comment below. I try to read every comment myself and sometimes even reply back. And I'm curious to see what you think. Okay, so sitting in the back seat of the IS350, which I don't do very often, but I have occasionally sat back here. It's gonna look like that front seat is touching my legs, and it kind of is, but most of that is because I have the easy exit on. So when I shut off the car, that seat moves back and the steering wheel moves up. However, it is touching my knees a little bit. This car isn't really designed to be a 4-door saloon that you're gonna drive people around in. It's like a coupe that you can still bring your friends with, I guess. That's how you should look at it. But being 6'1", my head is touching the ceiling just a little bit, and my knees a little bit there. Posture-wise, I don't feel like I'm straight up and down, but I also don't feel like I'm really super reclined. I don't think I can nap back here, is what I'm saying. And if there was another person back here with me, we have enough room between us. However, if there was a third passenger, this hump for where the drive shaft is would definitely be in their way. So you'd be sharing an extra leg on each side. But in a pinch, coming home from a restaurant, it's not gonna be the end of the world. I just wouldn't drive from Canada to Florida like this. We do have some cup holders here in the center armrest. It's not a pass-through because these seats fold down pretty flat, 60/40 as I mentioned. We got a couple lights here. So we have the dome light as well as a couple map lights. Those are triggered by just a couple buttons up there. The leather is still perforated and we have some seat anchors for child seats. So there's one on each side. And we do have a couple vents here. So the back seat is not totally neglected. There's not a ton of amenities, there's not a ton of space, but in a pinch, you're out with your friends, you can drive them home in the back seat and have no problems. Okay, so let's talk about driving experience. So under the hood, we have the 3.5 liter V6 that Lexus has used for many, many years. This one is the 300 horsepower that takes premium gas. And this is mated to a 6-speed transmission, and the two of them together create, it's interesting because years ago, I wouldn't have necessarily painted this with like a unique powertrain and a unique, engine and transmission setup. But in 2024, it sort of is because everything is going 4-cylinder, 8-speed, 10-speed, things like that. And this still holds on to that classic sort of platform of a driver's car. And you do really feel that driving it every single day. It has great get up and go. The handling is very on point, even though this one doesn't have that Sport Plus mode. It's still very agile and sort of like makes you want to take that long way home with the windy road and stuff like that. However, it's still smooth enough where, if you're on a highway, a couple hour drive through Toronto, you don't feel uncomfortable by any means. So that leads me to, Dustin, what is those few things that buyers should look out for or should know about this car that it might not tell you in the brochure? Number one is it does go through tires quickly because the camber that the vehicle has allows for that best of both worlds handling as well as smooth ride. And because of that, tires only last about 30,000 K usually, I think, depending on how drivers sort of treat their cars. And you can't really tell at first. You have to turn the wheel all the way to lock and really see that inside tire edge. So from the outside, it looks like you're gonna have lots of tread, but your dealership's gonna tell you it's time for tires. You're gonna be like, you guys aren't telling the truth. No, they probably are. It's probably just the inside wall that you can't see unless you crank that wheel or put it up on a hoist. There is someone in the comments that told me there is a kit you can get to eliminate that. It's aftermarket. You are definitely changing the suspension and steering setup. However, it is true. I have heard people do that and had still a great experience and make their tires last longer because you can't rotate your tires either. So that's very interesting. It's a staggered tire setup. So it's wider at the back than the front, and because of that, you can't rotate them that way anyway. So that's number one. Number two is, for being such a small car, it's not that great on gas. But that's okay, because a guy like me, I'd rather have miles per gallon than miles per gallon on a car like this. And if you're looking for a fuel-efficient sedan, there is many other options, even like the ES350, which is better on gas than this, or the ES300H, or something like the NX Hybrid or the UX Hybrid. There's tons of options if you're looking for fuel economy. This is not one of them, and if you ask me, that's totally okay. And that's pretty much it. Everything else about this car is super fun to drive, super smooth. There's really good fit and finish. It's still made in Japan, so the build quality is exceptional. You get it in an ultrasonic blue like this with red interior. It looks phenomenal. You're gonna love it, and you should probably get one before this era comes to an end, which I'm sure we're just on the brink of. So that's it. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of this video. I'm Dustin Mason from Performance Lexus in St. Catharines. This car is gonna be for sale soon if you want it. And other than that, I'll see you in the next video.